Kristen Perez, Gabe Perez. Welcome to Acquiring Minds, you two.
Thanks for having us, Will.
Thanks,
Great to be here.
Well, I've had multiple guests on who've bought a business with their spouse, their partner, but I've never had both people in the couple on at the same time. So this is a bit of a first that I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking forward to it because I think many of the themes in your story, your motivations for choosing this path as a family are going to resonate with people. So let's start with some backstory on the two of you. Who wants to kick us off?
I guess I'll go first. Well, I guess first off, Will, I just want to say, I think I speak for the both of us that this is pretty awesome that we're on this podcast right now. This podcast played a very really important role in our journey and, you know, kind of getting ourselves comfortable with the idea of doing this. So, you know, I know other people have said this to you. I feel like I'd be remiss in not just thanking you for what you've done and what you've done for this community, and it's meant a lot to us. So it's really an honor to be here on this podcast.
Well, Gabe, thank you very much, sir. Very kind of you to say. Appreciate it. Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate it.
So I am originally from New York. Was born in Manhattan. To a Puerto Rican mother. My mother was 18 when she moved here. And my father was of Cuban descent. You know, my mother was a Social Security worker. My dad was a construction worker. So we grew up pretty blue collar, bouncing around New York for a bunch of years. Moved out to the suburbs where it was a very different life. I was exposed to money and the idea of going to college was a pretty important sort of transition in my life. I ended up...
How old were you when you moved to the suburbs?
I was 8th grade. So, you know...
Delicate time.
Pretty delicate time. It was, you know, and my parents ended up getting divorced right around then. So it was a very challenging part of my life. And I think revisiting that was actually a big part of this story as well. As I was doing some reflection and thinking about my life and where I was and where I'd been, really coming to terms with some of the feelings and things I think I was suppressing back then was a really important part of helping me get my mind right heading into this acquisition process. And so, you know, it's like, well, why are you talking about your childhood? Well, you know, it's an important part of everyone's life, I think, to understand that. I ended up going to Fordham in the Bronx for undergrad. And, you know, cut my teeth in the property and casualty insurance world after college. At that point, I met a friend, a colleague, who floated the idea of going to business school. And it's something I'd never considered. And I thought it, for a lot of reasons, it made sense. It's, in the same way I kind of evaluated this opportunity was really the same way I evaluated going to business school. You know, there was a right way to do it. And for me, that was trying to get into the best school I could get into and do it full time and get it out of the way. So I ended up going to Tuck up at Dartmouth. And it was a great 2 years. We had our 2 first kids were born there. Our first child, Olivia, was born my first semester of business school. So that was a pretty crazy time.
Isn't that when you're supposed to be doing keg stands and socializing and networking with all the future leaders of the world, Gabe?
I think we got some street cred with my classmates, you know, being as responsible as we were. But I wouldn't have changed it for anything. I think, you know, we were young parents. We were 26, 27 at the time.
Yeah.
And I think now, being the age we are, I'm 43 now, having kids at a young age, I think was great, and I think, we're able to be a big part of their lives. Being a parent's exhausting, and I can't imagine doing this if I was much older and having young kids.
By the way, I am 44, about to have a baby. This is my second. But still.
Everyone's different.
Everyone's different. Well, this is my experience. It may not be yours.
I'm a late bloomer. What can I say? Go ahead.
Yeah. And after business school, I ended up working for a consulting company, LEK Consulting, out of Boston for a couple of years. And our family continued to grow. We had our third child, and we're looking to really settle down, and ended up moving back to our hometown in New Jersey, which is the house that Kristen grew up in. So we ended up buying it from her parents. And that's where I started my healthcare career. So I spent about a decade working in healthcare in various different capacities. Most recently for a Medicare Advantage company, overseeing the rollout of their software product they asked physicians to use when they were evaluating their patients. At the peak, we had about 40 people on the team. We had grown that from about a team of 6. We kicked butt. The company went public. It was a really cool experience. And then the company hit some hard times. And on late 2022, they told me that I had to lay off my team. And, they were restructuring. That really stung. I think when you build something, when you contribute to such a degree of value creation, and for that to happen really, really stung me. And I think, I decided to take severance and take time off and decide what was next. And, that's really where the ETA process started. Now I can get more into that, but that's my story anyway.
That was great, Gabe. Kristen.
Okay.
What about you?
So Gabe and I have been together a long time, so my story is kind of interwoven with his. I grew up in that New Jersey suburb that he moved to. So I'm from kind of a traditional upper middle class family, New Jersey suburb. I went to college and got my undergrad degree in business. After college, I bounced around. I had a few jobs, the last of which was on a trading floor of a hedge fund, which was really fun at the time. I did really well there. It was a fun job, an exciting job. I was well liked. I was made to feel like a real part of the team. But then around this time was when Gabe started thinking about business school. So I liked this job, but I was thinking a lot about what does this mean for my future, right? Am I really going to work at this hedge fund as a research assistant, administrative assistant for the rest of my life? Probably not. So Gabe got into business school, and that really changed a lot at that point. It was around 2009. That year we got married, we had our first baby, we moved to Hanover. First baby, first semester, like Gabe said, second baby, the last semester of business school. And I think when Gabe got that management consulting job, we had to make a big decision about my career. I had been home with the kids while he was in business school. And when he took that management consulting job, it really felt like both of us could not be working on a career at the same time. Those jobs are known for tons of travel. You're basically signing up to work every waking hour when you're a management consultant. So at that point, I didn't have a career that I was passionate about going back to. So I made the decision to stay home with the kids, and I felt really good about that. I always wanted to be a mom. I was happy to make the kids my number one priority and let Gabe focus on his career. So that was about a decade. I was home with them for about a decade before I started thinking about next steps. That happened when the kids went to school.
Kristen,
Yeah.
did you expect it to be 10 years going into it, or did it end up being longer or shorter than you thought?
I think it ended up being longer. Yeah.
Okay.
It just always, I think we were like a lot of families, Will, when you start doing the calculation of how much it would cost to take care of 4 kids, to pay someone else to take care of 4 kids, and how much
Right.
I would make. It just never really made sense. And I was happy enough to do it. I think maybe we would have been further along financially if I had worked, if we had 2 working parents, but it was kind of like a sacrifice that we decided to make.
But it was something you thought would be not forever. So
Not
you
forever.
eventually thought you'd go back to your
and
traditional career.
that's why when the kids were all in full day school, I started realizing like I wasn't exhausted anymore. Like I had mental space, and I started thinking about what can I do? What kind of meaningful work can I do outside of the home, but still prioritize the kids? And that's like really hard. I think I was like a lot of moms who have stayed home for a period of time. I felt like I had grown so much as a person and I had more to offer than I did before I had the kids, right? Like I had a lot of experiences. I like to joke that I had a business degree by osmosis. Like I was at Tuck with Gabe. Like we have a lot of smart friends. I'm in circles with people who do a lot of interesting things. And I am just the type of person who's always seeking out knowledge and content and learning. So I felt like I was valuable to the job market. But really, when I went to look at it 10 years after staying home with the kids, like there really wasn't much for me to do. So I tried a few things. I did baby sleep consulting, which was fun. I was a preschool teacher for 2 years, but that was during COVID and kind of a disaster. And then we moved here to Western Mass. I took some time to settle us. And then again, I started hitting the job market, and I started looking at admin jobs again. That's kind of what I was doing before I had the kids. And they just, like, I did not see it being a good fit. I got pretty far in some interviews, and in the end, I think having to go to a desk every day, like being expected to show up, wasn't going to be a fit with my family priorities and 4 kids. And really, it was hard to wrap our head around like the pay that I would make, even though we weren't paying for childcare. Having me unavailable and at a desk was just like, it was always a calculation of, was it worth it? And that kind of leads up to the time where Gabe went through the restructuring. That was really hard for me to see him go through. I saw how hard he worked. He's an extremely hardworking person, and it was super disheartening to know that you could put everything into something, and in the end, if you're not in charge, like it could just be taken away. So that was kind of where we were at when Gabe introduced ETA.
Well, it's funny, guys, because it does certainly feel like all roads are leading to this decision. I mean, the problems that you're describing in your life, in your lives, are nicely solved, if you will, by becoming your own, by buying a business and becoming owners. But a couple things I do want to also note that, like, while this is a story of a couple, I also think it's very much a story of each of you individually. So people listening, so Kristen, what you just described as a woman, this is something that women who have an appetite to have a professional career, but also have kids, know too well. I mean, this is a classic story of if you decide to step off out of the race for a while, getting back into it is very difficult. You're punished. You in the sense that like you're not earning what you think you're worth. None of that life experience you've accrued really matters on the market, and it's a very constantly hard kind of thing to confront. So the modern American woman has to deal with this, and so you're a perfect encapsulation of this. Am I wrong?
No, that is completely what I was trying to convey. Being a mom is, being a mom of any amount of kids makes you a boss in a way that's really hard to turn into bullet points on a resume. There's experience there and there's value there, but it's not something that translates.
So re-entry into the work market is so hard.
And I think it was hard as her husband to, sit there and realize. I've always thought Kristen could probably have been better at business than me. In fact, whenever we go to any, work events or conferences, I make sure to bring Kristen because she just lights up a room and can just really good at making connections and meeting people. And I think seeing her as a mom of 4 kids and how difficult it can be to manage that and organize it, I just knew what an underutilized asset she was.
How romantic.
It's so romantic.
And to sit there and just like see her like interviewing for these jobs that were just really, she was way overqualified for, really.
Yeah. Right.
And yet she's being told that she doesn't have the experience and it's a low paying job. And so it's frustrating.
Right. I can imagine. And then Gabe, you with just we haven't quite gotten, I think, to kind of the kind of emotional crisis that you experienced, but I think, anybody who's experienced kind of a deep professional kind of crisis that's also really tied in kind of emotionally will resonate with what we're about to hear, I think, from out of your mouth. But so anyway, just want to call out that like a lot of the themes in your story, independent of what you are both going through independently, I think are patterns that you'll see in people's lives, aside from just the fact that you're doing this as a couple. So I wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys, which I know from the pre-call, is your move to Western Mass and your experience of the economics of trying to live in a major metro area with 4 kids. Maybe you were going to get there, so if I'm spoiling it, but if you're going to get there, fine. But otherwise, please tell us.
I think that's a very important part of the story. It's consistent with the pattern we've had as a couple. It's going to business school, deciding where I was going to work after business school, having more kids, deciding to move to New Jersey and kind of settle down a bit, moving out to Western Mass. In each one of those cases, we really talked through, what are the pros and cons, or, what do we need to think about as we embark on this next chapter, and really make sure we're on the same page. Like, we still want the same things in life. And I think, moving to Western Mass, I think, yeah, as you said, I mean, it's difficult as a, family of 4 and we had the smallest house on the block. But, taxes were super high. The cost of living is just high. And, as we knew we had some equity in the house and, we could upgrade in size and quality of life. Maybe COVID changed a lot of people's mindsets. But I think, I was working remotely, so, it made sense for us, and we kind of pulled the trigger.
I just will add that in terms of themes of our story, that wasn't a normal thing to do. Like when we told people in our town, we're moving to Western Mass, they were like, wait, why would you ever leave this suburban oasis? And so we had to get comfortable doing something that people don't understand. And I think that really worked a muscle for at least me personally when we decided to buy a business, because people were like, wait, what are you doing? It was and I had to be comfortable with, they've never heard of this before. And yeah, it sounds crazy. So a building block.
Exactly. Yeah. Good practice for continuing to let the world know that you're making unconventional decisions. I love that. And just for people who don't know Western Mass, give us a quick picture. It's kind of rural. Why Western Mass? What's it got to offer? What's it look like?
Well, it's kind of like New Jersey in the sense of, if you ask people what Western Mass actually is, they would say anything west of Worcester. We are way west. We're in Berkshire County, so it's the westernmost county in Massachusetts. We live in Williamstown, which is a college town. Williams College is here, and we, so we live in the very top corner of Massachusetts. You can walk to Vermont from our house. It's pretty remote. It's pretty rural. It's a small community, but we love it. It's been great.
Okay, Gabe, please. I think it was your turn to carry on the story after being disillusioned with your corporate experience.
Yeah, I think the weight of what was in front of us really hit home. And I you're in the day-to-day of your job. You don't really have time to sit back and think about these things. But I think that the minute I realized I could very clearly see what my future was if I continued down this path, or at least the likely future. Moving from job to job, VP job to VP job, to maybe a SVP or CEO at one point, all jobs that I really had no interest in actually having. I mean, if you have met a lot of these people that work in these jobs in these corporations, it just wasn't appealing to me, but I was still, fighting for it for some reason. And I saw a lot of risk in that path. Like, there was no certainty there, right? And this, what happened to me really hit home, and I started to think about college. My kids are going to be in college soon. We've got several $1 million in college tuition, probably, cars, and everything else that comes with kids coming of age. And that was scary, like, to think about, and it's a big reason why a lot of people don't have kids in the first place, and I think we were just of the opinion, we want to have kids, we're going to figure it out. And and so, those two things, like really understanding where I was and the gravity of this next decision and where I was in my career. I was 42, and I was like, man, I've got like, I don't know, 10 years where I could like physically go hard, right? Like in my next thing, and like go all in, and then maybe another 20 if I'm kind of got things going right. And that's not a lot of time. Like, you have to make a decision at some point. And then I was still searching for what is that next step. And when I thought about some of the things that I trying to understand what was preventing me from getting to that next level in my corporate career, it always seemed like I was, waiting for that next promotion and never got it, or, just, I don't know. It felt like it was a struggle. Something was getting in my way. So I wanted to understand that. And I think it was a lot of self-loathing happening at that point in my life. Like, I just didn't like who I had become. Like, I was just not happy. I look back at my I kept a journal for many years, and I recently looked back at my journal, and I mean, looking back at some of the things I wrote in there about how unhappy I was in my career and just in general, was really like startling, and then I compare that with how I feel now. And I mean, things could not be any different.
And do you think in the moment, it sounds like even though you were literally writing this stuff down, your emotional state at the time, it somehow you didn't quite realize it because it's like you've only had recognition of it after the fact.
Yeah, that's right. Rediscovering kind of who I was and what makes up sort of my character. Like why am I the way that I am? Right. I think really understand with the help of my family, my childhood friends growing up, we talked through some stuff and that needed to be talked to, that hadn't been talked about for a while.
So, and this is when you revisit like the move to the suburbs and some of the, and I probably the divorce as well. Like this you start unpacking some of that.
Yeah.
This is that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you learn about yourself? maybe that's a separate podcast or too personal, but is there anything?
Yeah, no, I think I just realized how difficult a time it was and how I never really gave it enough credit for like how difficult that probably was for me to deal with at that age and not really appreciating it. And I think, I just, you go from being everyone in your school has a last name Perez or Hernandez, and you go to, Westfield where everyone's last name is Smith. Felt like a fish out of water. And in many ways, I felt like a fish out of water ever since. And, I think about how I feel now in my role. I've almost gone back to my roots of blue collar upbringing. I own a construction company basically, and the people I interact with on a daily basis are blue collar. And I feel more comfortable now in the shop than I ever did in a boardroom, and I think that's part, of why I feel so different now than I had before. And I think, so yeah, it's a transaction, but this is also about, a transformation, really. I mean, and realizing your potential. And, I think, and, I still didn't really know what I was going to do, right? I was still looking for jobs. I knew I was starting to understand a little bit more about myself. I still didn't know what the heck that meant for my future. And, I was still looking for jobs and came across a job listing for Chenmark on the Tuck job board. And I was like, that looks interesting. They had a, kind of a GM and training type role. And doing some research on Chenmark, I came across their podcast on acquiring minds. And that's how I found you. And the rest is history. That's right.
I'm so, touched and honored that Acquiring Minds has been part of the journey, guys. But it also sounds like Chenmark deserves a little credit here if that first episode hadn't intrigued you. So Chenmark, if you're listening.
Yeah, that's right.
That's really cool. That's great. Kristen, were you sensing his unhappiness in those years?
I mean, yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, this is what people do, right? I think we knew that you would prefer not to be working in healthcare. You weren't passionate about healthcare but you were just putting your head down. And, he was providing for our family. We had a good life. We had beautiful kids. Like, I think he was just doing what he thought he should be doing. And really, we didn't feel like we had many options. What were the options? We could start a business. Like, we definitely had conversations during those years of, daydreaming about ideas of businesses we could start. But I think we knew that was just too risky for people in our situation. we needed Gabe's paycheck to pay our mortgage. Like we didn't have the luxury to start a business from scratch. So I think what Gabe said, we were in it, but we didn't realize it could be different.
I'm reminded of Christian Bateson's interview. Christian, who bought the construction cleaning business in Georgia, finance background, 20 years on a financial career progression, and just absolutely miserable. But at some point tells himself, like, if I can just slog through another 20 years, if I can just, this is kind of what I have to do. So if I could just make it to retirement, just to kind of, before he kind of awakened, if you will, it was just this kind of like, well, this is just how life looks. I mean, you got to provide, and it's pays me well. So I guess this is it sort of mentality.
Yeah. I mean, you use the word awakening, and that's like the perfect word for it. I mean, I've said to many people, it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. Once like the risk calculus changed in my head, I was left with two options, right? And I told Kristen, we were talking about this yesterday, but if you lay out these two options side by side without any sort of indication of risk of either option, right? So you evaluate option one, which is corporate. Option two is going SMB and buying a small company. I think 10 out of 10 people would probably pick SMB based on the economics of it and just the overall opportunity.
And the autonomy.
Mm-hmm. I think what gets in people's way is the risk, right? And I think once that's gone, and it was gone. Like there was, I mean, in my mind, there was like, doing what I was doing was just as risky as this, in many ways. Yeah. And for my mental health, our financial health, for a number of reasons. And I think, deciding to go down the SMB path, I think it was just such a clear option. Once it like really settled in, it was like, this is the way, like, this is the only way. Right. And like, I needed to get there to like get through the process, because like it's a hard process, and like, yeah, the transaction, but then the transition and the managing, like it's all very hard. Like, but having that mindset, I needed to be in that mindset before going into this process. And I think, I don't know, I thought maybe I was ready at certain other points in my life, but I don't think I was. Like, I think it just happened when it was supposed to happen.
No, only just the thing about risk and, this concept that is so helpful. People think about having a job, corporate job generally, as like the less risky option, the risk-free option. And somebody has put it very well, I don't know who, but this concept now travels where actually that's just like the ultimate in customer concentration, to borrow a term from our world. You have just your employer, and you are just at the mercy of decisions on high. And you experience, and so it's not nearly as riskless as it appears. Indeed, it's quite risky, a job. And you were on the other side of experiencing that, because somebody who's maybe, their careers just continue to progress, they're in a W-2 and they're progressing, getting promoted, and there's never been some kind of crisis in that or interruption in that. They continue on their merry way and maybe never realize the risk of it, because it never bites them. But you were on the other side of an experience where, like, this corporate path is really risky because this decision was made and all that I'd worked for was, cast aside. And so that probably really informed or really made visceral your sense of the risk of a W-2. Whereas for other people, maybe they get it intellectually, but they've never felt it like you did.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So,
yeah.
It took a little while for him to get me on board because, he was going through this emotional journey. I wasn't sure if it was like a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
So, and then he throws out this, oh, I want to buy a business. Like now he knows what he's going to do. And I know Gabe. And when he sets his mind to something, I knew it was going to happen. But at the same time, you know, coming from our world, like we don't know anyone who owns a plumbing business or a types of businesses he was talking about. I was like, okay, first of all, we know nothing about that. And second of all, where are we going to find the money to buy like $1 million, $2 million, $3 million? How are we going to do that? Like it seemed very unrealistic. So then, you know, he sent me Acquiring Minds. Well, I spent this one weekend of my life at a volleyball tournament with my daughter, Mohegan Sun, like pacing the casino floors for exercise in between games and binging Acquiring Minds and texting Gabe questions. Like, I read the books. And I did. I got there.
That's full circle for me, Kristen. I have sat at those tables playing blackjack as a younger man in college. Long time ago, but still, I know that casino floor. So I'm glad to hear that my voice was in your ears. That's beautiful. Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I got there and I was, you know, I trust Gabe, right? We've been through a lot in life together, so it made sense. And maybe it wasn't the red pill that Gabe the Matrix pill, but I definitely got there and it solved for a lot of our problems. And it seemed like a solid plan. I was all in.
And Kristen, talk about how it solved your problem in your personal career journey.
So, okay, my calculus was worst case scenario. I'm doing like really low level admin work, but it's for the business that we own, right? So like that is the worst case scenario. And the best case scenario is that there are ways in which I can really get involved in a business where I can grow my skill sets and be valuable to our family, to our future. I thought it could be a real unlock for me and my career. And I was really drawn by the idea, you know, I was looking for meaningful work. And I think I was sold on ETA because of, you know, you can really impact people's lives with owning a business. So.
And that came across from Acquiring Minds and your reading of the books, because that's a recognition that people, my guests, often have post facto. Like once they get in the business, they're like, oh, wow, I can impact my employees' lives. This is amazing. But it wasn't a motivator or necessarily even something that they realized going into it.
Yeah, no, I think definitely from Acquiring Minds stories, like that checked a box for me. I hear that a lot from your guests.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, sometimes owning a business or working in a business, it's like feels like meaningless work. Like, what is the point? But just that flip of the script of the ways in which you can affect people's lives and what it means to have employees and to help people grow their careers. I thought that was really appealing.
I think to answer your question, well, from my perspective, I think having an impact on people's lives was very important part of the motivation to do this. I think maybe it was a little bit of resentment and thinking, you know, if it was my company, I would treat people a certain way, right? You could say that about any company, but I think for me, it was important to like have a company that people were treated with respect, that we really cared about the employees and their growth and their families. And I thought I saw that as like a huge bonus and plus for doing this. Like, it's almost like politics in a way. Like, we vote with what we decide to do with our talents. And, for me, it was, how do I put this like positive energy into the world, in the business world, and attract awesome people to do awesome things. And I think, that was really a big motivator actually going into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I've had many guests for whom it was so crystal clear going in. Some, I'm sure, but it sounds like for you guys, it was just absolutely, you just said a clear and a motivator. That's wonderful to hear. Okay, guys. Well, at 45 minutes in, we haven't even gotten to the search, but that's okay, because I feel like the most important part of the story is what we've been spending 45 minutes on. The rest is just numbers and searching. No, but let's get into the weeds now of the actual search and business.
Once we decided this was a path we wanted to go down, I started looking at companies locally. So I started networking here in Berkshire County, and there were some businesses that at first glance looked pretty good, pretty promising. The issue was, like, there's not a lot to choose from here, and it's extremely limited. And the companies that I thought were worth buying, the seller wasn't, the owner wasn't looking to sell yet. So, I felt like I had done a lot of work to at least assess, was working closer to home, buying a company in Berkshire County, the surrounding area, possible? Am I, I think the conclusion I came to was probably not. Like, and we didn't have the luxury of being able to wait it out for 4 or 5 years. At least in my mind, I hadn't, because I'd already sort of made that flip, that switch flipped in my head. And that's also when I reached out to an organization that you've had on here, that has been mentioned, New Majority Capital. And, I joined their first cohort, and through part of that process, I really was hitting kind of the broker network pretty hard. And, looking at CIMs every day, looking through a bunch of opportunities. And one night, right before I was about to go to bed, I got an alert on my phone from Search Funder that some broker had posted an opportunity for a small manufacturer in Massachusetts. And I was curious, so I called him up at 9:30 at night, and he answered, and we hit it off. And he said, "Hey, we should have a call with the seller." Spoke with the seller the next day, and we hit it off. And the more I learned about it, the more I liked the opportunity. The only problem was that it was 3 hours away. And so, we did put an LOI in. It was the first LOI. I put it on a business, and that was in early April of 22. And we ended up closing about 6 months later at the end of August.
Well, 3 hours is far. I mean, clearly, but it's also, spoiler, you did it, and we're going to hear about what it's like. But it's a radius that I've heard other guests have as they're kind of in their search or starting their search, and then wind back when they actually they go on site to visit a business that's for sale or whatever. That's 3 hours away. I think it was Jesse in New Jersey who had a 3 hour radius for his criteria, and he did it once, and he was like, I can't do this. This is too far. So anyway, it's dangerous. It's a tempting number because it seems manageable, but in fact, maybe it's not for most people. So probably not yet, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I do want to hear how you're managing that. But I guess the question would be, for right now in the story, how did you get comfortable with that?
I think, obviously, we talked about it a lot, and you obviously will, share your own thoughts and feelings on it. But I think in another life I'm a long haul truck driver, because I can
Me too, actually.
Yeah. It's a unique person.
I can drive forever. So it wasn't the driving that really concerned me. I think it was, I worked from home for many years, and for most of my kids' lives, that was their experience, me being home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so would definitely be a huge change. And I think, I knew I was secure in our marriage, and I knew that we were both very aligned on what we wanted. So I didn't really have a tremendous amount of concern there. I think we've always been able to, when things kind of start to feel out of sync, we kind of know it and we talk through it. And I was confident we'd be able to manage through that, as part of this transition. And I think it was, the kids, and I told myself I would, 9 to 12 months, we'll try and, get someone in there so that I don't have to be out there every day. Right. So, at this point, I'm there a few nights a week. Rarely, I don't think I've been there Monday to Friday in a very long time. And so, I'm there 2-3 days a week, most weeks, which actually gives me the space to, really work on some of the things I need to be working on without the distractions of somebody coming in to, I don't know, just shoot the, what.
Yeah.
But
No,
I
totally.
think part of the calculus was also we knew what it was like for Gabe to be away.
Yeah, that's true.
We did it in his management consulting years. And just in terms of what we've said about timing having to be right, like our kids were good age, right? Like they go to school all day, they come home, they have insane sports schedules. As much as we knew that they were going to miss Gabe and it's valuable to have two parents there, we felt like our weeks go by in a blink of an eye, and then he would be home for the weekend. It was like good timing in their lives.
And so to be clear, the plan was you obviously you're not going to do that commute in a day. So you'd spend the night there, multiple nights. You spend the week there. Is that what it was? Monday morning to Friday night sort of thing?
Yeah, I'd say the first couple months, more often than not, I was there, Monday to Friday. Yeah. Yeah. And that was the plan. Yeah, it was, I think strategically, I never got like a full-time apartment there. I didn't want to sort of feel like I had a second home. Like I have one home, and I think
Interesting. That's clever. I get it.
I intentionally,
It's a different psychology.
it was definitely intentional about that.
I think this is a good part to say, like, part of our strategy was, I was going to be here 3 hours away and he was going to be there. And some people might say, like, well, then it's impossible for me to be involved in the business, right? Like, how is that going to happen? It's a small construction company. What could there possibly be to do? But we were pretty dead set on the fact that it would not work if I was not involved. Like, our happiness would not be there. There's no way he could come home after a week away and, fill me in on every detail and for me to understand actually what he was going through. Like, the only way for us to survive this, what we anticipated was going to be a really hard time, was if we were in it together, like on the daily, like a team tackling the problem.
So, but had that not been the plan?
It was
then
the plan,
before?
but when we're talking about 3 hours away, you might think that, well, it wouldn't work. Like our plan for me to be involved wouldn't work, right? Because we can't both be 3 hours away. Like, so how are we both going to run a business if I can't be there because someone has to be here? So, and we can talk more about it, but it wasn't exactly easy at first to get me involved.
Yeah, no, I think
We had to buy video cameras for the office. women in the office had never done a Zoom before, and they were all really open to it. And we were lucky they were right there with us on the mission to make sure I felt involved. But it would have been easy, I think, is my point, for me to like drop away. But we knew it was important for me to be involved if it was going to work, and we were going to come out the other end.
I agree with that.
Yeah, interesting. So the 3 hour difference made it like, in some ways, Kristen, you could have dropped off or not found yourself a part of it. On the one hand, that could have been kind of an easy outcome, or on the other hand, but on the other hand, the 3 hour difference made it that much more important that indeed you be super involved. You needed to be that much more involved.
But I think it also, it was part of the criteria was, if it was going to be something I had to commute to and stay multiple days away from home, I sure as heck, was not going to be working on the weekends. Because I knew I needed that family time. I think I needed to be a dad. And, so that was also another reason why I liked the business, among a bunch of other reasons, was that they really typically did not do much weekend work at all. And so I've been able to be dad on the weekends and still coached my kids baseball this spring. And it's been good.
That was a little bit insane, but you did do it.
Yeah, spring was like next level insanity. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I think the first few months, I'm not really involved in my kids' fall and winter sports, like from a coaching standpoint. So I just have to show up to the games on weekends. When you're coaching a team, it's a little different. You got to be there for practices. You got to be there for games. And managing that was way more difficult than I anticipated.
Well, I think it's not just about coaching. It was just about showing up for the kids, because those are things that you've always done with them, and just like following through on that.
I hate making a commitment to something and like feeling like I'm falling short. And so it was like, it was a challenge, but we're through it now. What we do is, the business is really what they do is they are a construction company, primarily. And if you ever walk into a restaurant, or if you had the privilege of going to the back of a supermarket, you'll see a walk-in cooler or freezer. This company essentially assembles those structures. We don't do refrigeration. We don't do plumbing, electrical. So there's no licensing involved. Typically, no permits we have to pull. And we do everything from a very small walk-in cooler to a huge commercial industrial freezer for a distribution center, for example. And business has been around 30 years. So it was founded in 1990. The owners who were selling it had been there for 7, and they were looking to retire. There was 3 owners, a husband, a wife, and one of their friends. And, the business had done, when they bought it, it was doing about $1 million, I think. And I think, it had grown basically about 4 times that by the time, they were looking to sell it. And, so they were looking to get out. I think one of the things that I really liked about it was a ton of repeat customers. There was no real customer concentration. There wasn't recurring revenue, but that didn't really scare me. I saw the repeat customers as I got pretty comfortable with that. And I think everyone loves recurring revenue, but it felt like a unicorn, and any company I came across that had recurring revenue was asking for way too much money.
Yeah.
So I like the competitive dynamics. This company was really going way back. There was one company in New England that did this back in the 80s, and the owner I guess he had a few vices, and the company went under, and it split into three companies. People started their own sort of thermal contracting companies. One of them is right down the street from us, and the second one was about 20 minutes away from us. And those were the two competitors. That was really who we were up against on, 90% of the work we were bidding on. And I thought, well, all right, I like my chances against two other people. And thinking about, the average job size is about $10,000. We did about 400 projects last year. And there's a real opportunity for us to get into, much larger projects. There are very big projects, I'd say $1 million and above, that, then you start to see national players come in. There's way more competitive. It's not nearly, the economics just aren't nearly as good. Yes, like they keep your guys busy, which is, I've come to learn is a very important metric, is man-hour utilization. But there was a sweet spot, sort of sub-million to kind of where we were today. And I saw a tremendous opportunity there. I thought there was plenty of business out there that this could easily be, 10, 20, $30 million business. And, people need to keep things cold. That doesn't go away. They did really well through COVID. They were an essential business. So there was a lot of things to like about it, and the owners were great. That was a huge part of the criteria for me, was owners that I could just be comfortable with, knowing they were going to be there for the transition, and maybe beyond, and that they were just good people, high character people. And the owners were that. They were really just outstanding, and I have been super supportive. And the business was doing great for a construction company. It was averaging about 35% gross margins, sometimes close to 40, and it was making plenty of money. And I just thought it was a great. I think the first time I mentioned it to Kristen, she was like, "Wait, what? What do they do?"
Well, speaking of which, let's make sure I got it right. So it's called Refrigerated Structures of New England. So you build refrigerated structures. So you get the panels of these walk-in coolers, and then build to spec a cooler that is large and sits in the back of a restaurant or a like a supermarket. And so you're kind of a fabricator. Well, you said it's more of a construction, really, it's a construction business. So you bring in supplies. So you have suppliers for all the materials and the supplies, and then you guys build to spec the cooler.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we also make cold storage doors by hand from scratch. And so refrigerator, cooler, and freezer doors. I think it was one thing I didn't really appreciate coming in was just how important I think doors are. It's really kind of a great way to get your foot in the door with customers. We've got our logo right on the door. It's we made about 100 doors last year. I think we're on pace to probably double that this year. But doors, doors have been important part of our business as well. But yeah, so that's
so when you make a cooler, all the supplies of the walk-in cooler come from suppliers, but then you all will be the manufacturer of the door itself.
Exactly. Yep.
And that is and that has branding on it, so it's kind of like the the HVAC company that puts their magnet on the side of the HVAC cooler. It's like when they go to need service or they want to do a new one, there's your name.
Yep.
We also do service.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We do a lot of repairs and service. I mean, you think of any, a lot of Panera's, McDonald's, Dunkin', we've probably done a cold storage door and, a bunch of those across New England, supermarkets, every Shaw's or Star Market or Hannaford.
Liquor stores.
Florida's. We've sort of touched probably. So it's, that's kind of who our current, target customer is. What else can I say about it?
Well, I think it's interesting just that our competitors have kind of over time moved away from these smaller jobs. They all want the big jobs. So it's just created this opening for us to just, it's like the bread and butter of our business, all of these small jobs. And it's tempting to go after the big ones, but they are riskier and they're more competitive. The margins are smaller. So I think if we can really focus here, and then just our goal is to just do a few big jobs.
Few big projects a year.
Not get into much over our head.
Especially if this whole segment of the market is just yours for the taking.
Yeah, it's a sweet spot.
Yeah, I'm reminded, and maybe this is a classic pattern in all kind of construction-related businesses, but I'm reminded of Ben Rizzo's episode. Ben bought that distressed elevator servicing business in Pittsburgh, and the business was in distress because they'd been sitting in a certain segment of the market, and then they were contracted to do a big new construction project in Pittsburgh. Like apparently everybody in Pittsburgh knows this project, like a giant project. They got a lot of work on that project. The project fails. So then they're caught holding the bag. They did work and didn't get paid for it. But the moral of the story is that they really they were hungry to do a bigger project. They had this opportunity, that seems like the natural progression of an ambitious company. But understanding those risks and being able to manage cash flow and working with the giant general contractor that was their client and knowing how to negotiate better terms and so on was not something that they knew how to navigate, and it bit them hard, and it literally almost put them out of business. Not saying that that's what would happen here, but it does feel like there's a pattern there. You're at a certain segment of the market, maybe in construction. If you want to go bigger, it's just a lot of risk and complexity to go to the next level up. So you got to think hard about whether or not you really want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've seen firsthand how that can happen in our space. One of our competitors has come across hard times lately, I'll just say. And we've benefited from it, certainly from a business standpoint, but even some of the people that were looking to leave, we've taken on. So it gave us, I didn't really touch on luck.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of luck. Once you get past the being in the right mindset and having the conviction, it's we needed some luck too. I mean, that broker answered the phone.
Well, okay. But you picked up the phone at 9:30, Gabe. So that wasn't luck. Give me a better example of luck in your story.
I think coming into this, we had a strong competitor that I think we were aspiring to be like, right? This was a company that was basically us just a decade ago, and they grew into a $50 million plus company. And the owners ultimately ended up selling out to a private equity group, and it's been kind of a disaster ever since. And so, I think I couldn't have predicted that they were going to, fumble the ball, right? And that's a huge tailwind for us. And I think, I could have bought this business 4 years ago, and that would not have been the case. And our other company that's down the street, I learned that they actually sold. We closed on August 29th. They closed that Friday. August 29th, I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah. And so literally two sister companies sold almost within the same week. And so they were also going through transition, right? So all of a sudden it was kind of us against a strong, large competitor that was kind of hobbling, and another competitor that was going through the same transition. And I felt pretty good that, we could do a good job through that transition and take some market share. But I couldn't predict. I couldn't predict.
Were you at all frustrated, Gabe, that the same business was for sale down the block as opposed to 3 hours away?
Oh, no. This is down the block from our shop.
Yeah.
Oh. So both 3 hours away. So where is it? Where is the business? Where is 3 hours away from Williamstown?
Lakeville, Massachusetts, which is in the South Shore, kind of equidistant between Boston and Providence.
And by the way, that competitor didn't sell to a searcher, did it?
No.
How would
Because I have been reached out to. I couldn't find my message with the person, the DM with the person. So forgive me, person, if you're listening, who bought a very similar business recently. And I said, how bizarre. And because, Gabe and Kristen also blah, blah, blah. And he had apparently met with you guys at some point or talked to you guys at some point. So is that somebody else, or is that indeed the person who bought this?
I would not be surprised if he listens and hears this episode. So,
well, that'd be interesting if he came on. My first time were two guests or competitors.
That's a good angle.
Plot thickens. The plot thickens. The world gets smaller. Well, guys, we're approaching time, but there's still some important stuff I want to get to. I want to hear just some numbers around the business, if you could. I want to hear what the transition. We got to hear a little bit about what it's been like as operators from both of your perspectives, because your roles in the company are so different. So let's start there. Can you give me what numbers can you share about the business and the deal?
Yeah, so the business was doing about $1 million, give or take, in SDE. And
that's also something to like about it. Nice size.
Yeah. It was the right size. But, I think, one of the things that comes up on your show quite often is, do you buy the $1 million company that has like a full management team in place, or do you buy a $700,000 company that has that in place? And so I think, they had the owners were running the business. Like they were running the business. Like the husband and the friend were out there selling, and the wife was in the office kind of managing the office and everything related to that. So, I think when I reflect on the price, we ended up buying it for about 4.2x that SDE number. I definitely paid I think a premium in hindsight, but there was like a lot of opportunity cost for me in there. I thought that if this business were for sale a year from then, it probably would sell for something that I couldn't afford. Right. And, I think that's proving out, we're going to grow probably 17, 18%. At least that's what we're on target to this year. And, be a $5+ million company. I think we've got tremendous opportunity in front of us. I believed in the growth story, and I was willing to maybe pay a little more than I could have if I really pushed.
Well, and Gabe, to be clear, you thought it would, like if this business sold a year later, it would sell for more because it was growing.
Correct.
In other words?
Correct. Okay. Yes.
Well, and growth costs a premium. People a high multiple is the price you pay for a growthy company. So while it might feel like a bit of a premium, and I don't know all the details of the transaction, while it might look and feel like a premium, you can explain that away by basically this is a growthy company. Now, you could argue both sides of that maybe in ETA you don't want a growthy company because you want something that's a little bit flatter because we're buying enduring profitability, and something that grows quickly you worry that it could also come down quickly. So one of these kind of debates that we could go back and forth on, but doesn't seem crazy to me that you had to pay a little extra for a business that was on a trajectory.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because when we went to the bank, we worked with Live Oak for the SBA loan. I think they had trouble getting to the price, or getting comfortable with it. So, the sellers ultimately put in about 12% in, seller's notes, half of which are on full standby. And, we haven't even talked about equity, but that's a huge part of this story too.
But to be clear, Live Oak didn't like that it was growthy, did they? And they didn't like that it was construction.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to give a shout out to my, working with my Live Oak kind of rep, but he was just fantastic. I mean, and he really helped kind of usher us through the process and advocate for us internally there. And so, I think that that was huge, was just having that. And I very easily could have had someone who wasn't as effective at that. And, I think for us, the company had its 3 best years in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was growth, and it seemed, at least in me, I believed in the sustainability of it. To convince the bank that was, just took a lot of kind of going back and forth. Are you comfortable with these growth assumptions, even in a conservative case? This is what it could look like in a few years. But I think just getting them comfortable with believing that the company was in a new place now. It was not that $1 million company that it was 7 years ago, but it's a growing $4+ million company, and that will be stable. I think it was challenging, but I think it took again a lot of just kind of talking it through with the bank and the underwriters.
Well, Gabe, talk it through a little bit with us, because there are lots of businesses out there, particularly maybe construction, where there's been a lot of growth in recent years, and this tension of will that growth continue or not is not only one if you want the business, you have to convince your lender of, but you have to convince yourself of. So I'm aware of time, but I think this is important. How did you convince yourself? How did you get over the very doubts that Live Oak was presenting to you? And plug your Live Oak guy.
Yeah. So I think that there's, one thing is I had a strong background. So I had, plenty of experience, in dealing with, just building teams. And I felt very strong in my background. The bank liked my background. I was an MBA, I had a good resume. I think, talking through the competitive dynamics and kind of what we talked about, and that, these margins are what they are because there's no one else doing it right now. Right. And I think, and for the foreseeable future, we didn't see that going away, right? And we could always expand geographically because right now we're just in New England, and you think about all the cold stores that's from Providence down to New York City or Philadelphia. There's a ton of opportunity there. that that's for kind of the future. So the competitive dynamics, my background, and I think it was, the fact that they had no marketing at all whatsoever. They did very little in terms of having kind of an organized, sales process. And so I think painting the picture of like, I'm able to handle like ushering and leading this business through this transition. We've got a favorable playing field. We've got a lot of repeat customers. They like the repeat customers. Very little concentration. So it wasn't like we were going to lose one customer and lose half of our revenue. And it was the dynamics around related to competition, I think, meant we could, have a pretty healthy margins on the work that we did. So I think a combination of those things is what ultimately got them to be comfortable or untrained.
Well, just to emphasize your point on gross margins, it's a really strong one. People should look at the margins of businesses they're evaluating and look at them look at them also just kind of objectively, but also compared to other margins within that industry. Strong gross margins is a great signal of pricing power, which is a great signal of competitive differentiation. Maybe there aren't many competitors, or maybe the company, your target company, is just out, is a standout and out competes the competition. But either way, it's a very strong signal. But the other thing, just to push here, Gabe, on construction businesses, of course, that people get spooked by is their cyclicality. How did you again get comfortable, or get Live Oak comfortable with the fact that like how many Dunkin' Donuts are going to be being built here in the next 10 years, really, sort of thing?
What we pointed to was that, when the world shut down, these guys were open and they really thrived through it, I think. When the economy is down, okay, people hunker down, they don't go out, right? So maybe the restaurants aren't upgrading their coolers and freezers, but the supermarkets are expanding their capacity, right? And the distribution centers for those supermarkets are expanding their capacity. When times are really good, a lot of restaurants being built, a lot of, upgrades being made on the restaurant side of the business. And we hadn't even really touched other sort of market segments like life sciences. They'd done some grow houses. So actually marijuana cultivation facilities use our panels. That business has slowed down, but I think it's, there was a diversification there. There's, we've got restaurants, you've got supermarkets, you've got food processors. So, across the spectrum of like the food chain, we were playing in like every little part of it, right? And each one of those is gonna react differently to a recession, or really good times. And I think we can only
smooth out your own demand.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we, there's a lot of new builds going on, but in our industry, there's a lot of activity in the areas you'd expect, right? Like Texas and Florida and the South. And, but what I see up here is we're kind of reached this replacement cycle where some of these supermarkets haven't upgraded their cold storage in like 30 years. And, that's a tremendous amount of our work is upgrading sort of old existing cold storage and, using some of the latest, technology we have in insulation now. But that's a huge part of it as well, is like, there's the sort of the larger macro picture, but then there's just like demand, right? If you have a cooler that's falling apart, the health department's going to come in there and say, hey, you can't have food in this cooler. You got to knock this thing down. Happens all the time.
We've seen some pretty gross coolers and freezers.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen mushrooms growing out of cooler ceilings. So it's
oh, gross.
Yeah.
Don't tell us. None of us will want to eat in restaurants again. Kristen, how has the transition gone for you? What does life look like for you now?
Yeah, I think in terms of the work, it's been best case scenario. I had a slow transition in just by proximity, but I've probably been there 5 times maybe now at this point. Whenever I see a window of opportunity to get away, I'll go over to the shop. And just those visits and staying super consistent with showing up every day on my computer. I've really gotten my hands dirty in the business. The transition, I don't know how one single person could pull off a transition. The first days, you can spend weeks just changing usernames and passwords and setting up accounts. And there's so many logistics to get through just to get started.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I was doing all of that, and Gabe was just in it. He was going out with the crews, meeting customers, getting to know the employees. And over time, I've just taken over, I think, all of the HR.
Yep.
A couple big projects involved there, like switching our payroll company, setting up 401k benefits for everyone. They had them before, but changing providers and creating our own is a whole thing. And, Gabe and I are spending a lot of time now talking through our handbook, and I've kind of just become the HR back office. My vision of what I'm doing is I'm setting a foundation. So whatever we do next, if we're growing, if we're acquiring a new business, I've figured it out. It will be smoother next time. I'm constantly learning.
And are you full time?
So this has turned out to be perfect for me because it's flexible, right? Gabe and I are accountable to each other. I'm at my desk every single day. Some days it's 2 hours. Some days I do get 8 hours in, but that schedule works for us because I get to prioritize the kids.
Yeah.
And
As long as you process payroll.
as long as I process,
Yeah. That's more important than your kids, frankly. Don't sleep on that one.
well, I mean, yes. If I don't process payroll, there's 23 people who can't pay their bills. So that's a huge responsibility. The first time I pushed that button, I couldn't breathe. Yeah, it's been really fun, Will. This has gone better than I could have expected, and it's been super fulfilling. It's been really cool for our family. I know we focused on a lot of the negatives of 3 hours away, but in the same way, we have made a point that we both need to be involved in the business. We've done it with the kids, so they take a ton of ownership and being business owners, and it's really a true family business. Gabe comes home and they know employee names, they know projects we're working on. I don't know, it's been just really great for all 6 of us.
Well, guys, there's more to hear about. We don't have time in the business and, plans for the business and so on, but I gotta start winding us down and let you go. But to the point about your family, let's close out with a couple questions there. First, what's it done to your marriage, or how does your marriage feel different? And then second, just the big picture, the money picture, because I think you just answered, Kristen, for us. This is kind of emotionally and in a sense of purpose. It's given you both a purpose. I'm putting your words in your mouth that you lacked. But on the money thing and the building wealth, is it working? So first, the marriage question: has it changed your marriage, and if so, how?
Well, I think when Gabe was talking about all those years where he was here physically here, working from home here, but unhappy. And that was just like the status quo. And there was nothing bad, but I think in terms of our marriage, it feels different because now we're personally fulfilled, I think separately personally fulfilled. And so when we come together, I think even though we don't see each other every day, I think it might make our marriage better. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I think
Sounds crazy.
I think a lot of people ask us this question, and it's hard for them to like actually believe me when I say I think things are better than they've ever been, because I think so far at least I've been able to balance, really when I'm there in Lakeville, I am focused on the business.
This is really
100%,
key. Yeah.
right? And I'm going all out, sun up to sundown on that business, making sure I'm moving that forward. And when I'm here, that's my family time, right? And outside, yeah, I do have some stuff that I do here at home that's important. But I just being able to like separate those two things and compartmentalize those things, like physically, because I'm not physically here, has in some ways just made this transition sort of feasible in many ways. Because if I was like in the family every day with the business, and having to manage those two things and take kids to play dates and other things and who knows what else, like that might be too much. So it's worked out. And I think, like I said, we do make a point to, going on date nights and making sure we're staying in touch and in sync.
Yeah. And we don't think it's forever. I think we've said that. We have a plan to get Gabe home more.
Forgive me, to compare it to revenue. There's quality of revenue, as listeners know. There's, not every $1,000 of revenue that comes into the business are created equal. Similarly, there's quality of time. And so Gabe being in a bad headspace, even if you were getting more time with him, it was low quality time, but to put it bluntly, because he was in a bad headspace. And I think in any couple, any couple or any relationship really, if one party is unhappy, that's going to spill over, of course, into the relationship. I've seen it in my own life for sure. So, I'm happier doing what I'm doing now than I've been in a very long time, and my wife is the beneficiary of that. That's very logical. I think that makes sense. The other thing, just to say about the 3-hour separation of church and state, there, I used to be a big believer of that because I've mostly kind of had jobs that I can do from anywhere, work that I can do from anywhere. And I remember I was such an advocate of just keeping those two things separate. But over time, it's just so easy to start working from home if you have a job that allows that. And then, of course, COVID did that for all of civilization for people who can work from home. They now are part of the week. We liked the flexibility, but now we also realize that there's a lot of unhealthiness to that. And keeping a nice stark line between professional life and personal life is very appealing. I get the appeal of that and how that's almost more functional rather than less. Okay, and so how do we feel about, so you bought a business with $1 million SDE. Now, obviously, there's loans there. We didn't even get too really into the terms of the deal very much. You did give us some details there, Gabe. We're not going to get into that now, but just, and you're growing it. I assume you have plans to grow it even more over the next 5 and 10 years, but distill it for us. How do you feel like it addresses the balance sheet of the family and the future of the family and the millions of dollars, maybe literally, of college fees you got around the corner, et cetera?
So, we're able to pay ourselves enough that we're fine right now, and I think that was just like baseline. We needed to make sure we could pay our bills, right? And I think
Right.
we are, I think, still trying to get comfortable with like when it's okay to start taking money out of the business, and I think we're still, the company is still performing very well, right? And I'll just say that, like, of course, life would be very different if, that huge chunk of money wasn't going out to Live Oak every month, but it's performing well enough that we could still make a decision at the end of the year. Like, do we want to reinvest in the business or do we want to take some of this money out? And I think that's a decision we'll have to make at some point. I do feel like, if the company is where I want it to be in 5 years, then I think that the answer to that question will like unequivocally be yes. Like this was exactly what we expected.
And completely life-changing.
And completely life-changing, right? And I think it's.
What number is that, Gabe, in 5 years? Where do you want to see it?
I'm happy with us getting to, $15-20 million.
And what SDE, translate that to SDE for us?
So that would then, you're talking about,
Four times the SDE?
$3 to $4 million.
Well, hell yeah. That'd be pretty nice. That'd be great. That'd be a wonderful outcome. And just to touch on it, you feel like that's pretty realistic. You've already kind of talked about the markets that you're not in and you could see going into, the geographies that you're not in that you could see going into. That all feels like you could get to 15 to 20 million in revenue.
It's definitely feasible. I have really sold that vision to some of the kind of important people we've been able to bring on to help get us to that next level. And I think that one important thing to say is, we talked about like changing people's lives, right? And that is still a huge part of why we're doing this. And, we've put in essentially a profit share program. And so the better we do as a company, the better everyone does in our company, right? And I want it to be that way. And so, talking about, is it good for us? But it's good for everyone that trusts their lives and careers, their well-being with us, right? Everyone, we want to make sure that folks feel rewarded. And that's a great place to work. So I forgot to mention earlier that I meant to give a shout out to Eric Rabinovich over at Live Oak. Sorry, I forgot to mention his name earlier.
Noted. There you go. Eric, thank you for doing that.
Thank you,
Gabe.
Eric.
All right, Gabe and Kristen, anything that we didn't hit on, plot point, theme that you want to convey? We covered a lot of territory here, but there's a lot to your story. So anything that wasn't said?
I think we covered everything. I just hope that people who listen to the story know that it's something that can be done. It can feel daunting going down this path. It can feel crazy, but it's super rewarding. It's possible. And I think it can be life-changing.
Yeah, I think it's taken me 43 years to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life. And I guess the one thing is, we know what it's like facing, all the costs and expenses of things coming down the road and raising children and, having a happy marriage. We've dealt with all those things and we still continue to deal with them. And, but I think, being in sync and knowing that we want the same thing in life for us and for our kids is maybe the single most important thing in all of this, because we couldn't do it without each other. And I can't overstate that. I mean, our relationship has been, I think, just like the foundation that's allowed us to build this life. And it's super important, and I know we said that, but I think really hammering it home and knowing that it's okay to feel like you don't know what you're doing with your life, but as long as you keep moving towards, that direction, whatever it is, towards improving your life, you'll find it eventually.
Well said, Gabe. And a beautiful note to end on. Gabe and Kristen, if people want to reach out for marriage counseling or other questions about your deal, how do you prefer they do that? Do you like email? Do you like LinkedIn? Do you like something else?
You can find me on LinkedIn, and Kristen as well.
Yeah, I prefer email.
I noticed, Kristen, that you've added a photo on LinkedIn.
I added a photo. Will, I'm really working on that LinkedIn profile. You were one of my first friends. I call them friends.
Friends.
I'm building it out,
Great.
Will. My LinkedIn page is up and coming.
Great.
You can get us Kristen at rsofne.com and Gabe at rsofne.com.
And just to say the name of the company again, RS of NE is Refrigerated Structures of New England, rsofne.com, name of the business. Gabe and Kristen, what a cool story. Thank you guys for coming on. And now you will be part of the inspiration for others who come after you. So congratulations to you both for figuring it out, for taking an unconventional path, having the chutzpah and vision to do that. You guys really deserve all the credit for the good things that are happening to you. So thanks for coming on.
I appreciate that, Will.
Thanks to you again, Will.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come. Stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.